God and our Father, we thank you this morning for this day, for this world that we have the privilege of living in, and we ask your blessings upon this meeting this morning as we pray to be good stewards of all you've blessed us with our environment and our resources. These things we lift in your name. Amen.
And thank you. We're going to have 3 presentations today. So normally when we have our presentations, we do them and then have our questions at the end. And while we're getting this slide set up here, Representative Harden is going to head up our Environmental Quality Committee, and Chuck Williams is going to do our resource management. We're starting to get bills assigned to our committee now. So just look at the posting on our bulletin board and on the website to keep up with where we are and what we're up to. And as always, please turn off any cell phones and such as that. So we can call GIFA up first if they're ready. Do you have slides, or do you want to do the... You got a show? Okay. All right. Do we have prime time with Forestry? All right. Are you using slides or just presenting? All right. Forestry moves to the front. So then we'll do. Are you ready? He's ready. Okay. Back in line. All right. So GIFA, please come forward. Or stand there. So did your partner leave you?
Problem. No, he's right here. You know, he's a busy man.
Yeah. First of all, we're going to hear today from GIFA, which is our financial authority. They really handle several fund categories that relate to water issues at our local governments. And then we'll hear from Forestry. That is another agency that comes before our committee with legislation. And then we're going to hear from the Georgia Association of Water Professionals, and they know the history of water better maybe than most because they're the ones who implement all the policies we pass for our local governments and such. And I call them the infantry on the ground, so I thought I'd give you a good perspective. And we're ready.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be here again. It seems like we do this annually. And I know you've got a pretty full agenda, so I'm going to do a very brief overview of GIFA, and would be happy to meet with any and all of you at your convenience to go into any of the programs with more specificity if you so desire. My contact information, I've given out some handouts. My contact information's on the back of that. GIFA, as you know, is the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority. We operate under 2 main divisions, our Energy Division and our Water Resources Division. In energy resources, we focus in on energy efficiency, renewable energy, energy assurance, and the management of all state-owned fuel storage tanks. And we accomplish that through several programs. The first is the State Energy Program. That's where we provide financial incentives and technical assistance to communities and other interested parties. We've had a couple of programs that have been relatively successful the past couple of years. The last 2 years we've worked on an agricultural irrigation motor exchange where we've replaced diesel motors with electric motors. With a grant or a rebate of about $10,000 for those changeouts. That's going to save approximately 200,000 gallons of diesel fuel annually for those folks that did that. And this year we're working on a program where we're providing subsidization and rebates for folks who are installing electric charging stations for electric vehicles. And we've awarded 40 of those to date. So that's helping move the needle as far as providing charging stations throughout the state and hopefully relieve some range anxiety for those folks that are purchasing electrical vehicles. We also provide technical support and training for primarily through the K through 12 sector, where we operate a building operator certification program so that the folks who operate the schools can learn more about energy efficiency and put in some programs in their particular facilities that will help them save. The other way we have affect energy efficiency is through the Weatherization Assistant Program. We contract with 18 community action agencies, and we provide weatherization services to every county in the state. In FY14, we weatherized about 1,540 homes, and so that's a nice little program that helps out the low-income families, the disabled, and the elderly. We also house the State Utilities Program, where we assist state agencies in the procurement of their energy and utilities. And we also manage the Guaranteed Energy Performance Contracting Program for the state, for state authorities, and for local governments, assist them with that program. And we also help in energy assurance planning. We are the lead agency for the Emergency Support Function 12 with GEMA. And we work there whenever the Emergency Operations Center is activated. We go in there and work with the utilities to make sure power gets restored, and those facilities that need power first, i.e. rest homes, hospitals, et cetera, they're on the priority list of the utilities as that's being restored. And we also deal with fuel outages when the EOC is operational. Fuel storage tank program, we manage and remediate and maintain all of the state-owned above ground and below ground fuel storage tanks. So that one speaks for itself. In water resources, this is what most folks know us for. We provide low-interest loans for water and sewer financing, for solid waste, landfill work, and for land conservation programs. And we do that through 4 loan programs. 2 of them are federally funded and 2 are state. The first 2 on your list there, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, or SRF, and the Drinking Water SRF, are the federally funded programs. And then we have the Georgia Fund, which is a state-funded revolving loan program. That's where we do our water and sewer work and our solid waste landfill work and loans. And then we have the Georgia Reservoir Fund, where we fund, and we have some flexibility, a lot of flexibility in that program to help communities fund their long-term water supply projects. Those are our 4 programs. We have interest rate reductions that are available to communities. As you can see, our federal program is 1% lower than our state-funded program, and our state-funded program is benchmarked against the state's AAA bond rate. And then we also have other incentives. If a community is doing a water conservation project or an energy conservation project or a land conservation project, they get a 1% rate reduction. If they're a community that's designated as a water first community, they can get a 1% reduction. And if they are designated as a DCA plan first community, they can get a 0.5% reduction. But they can't get all those at once, just one. So, but those are our 4 loan programs. This is just a little graph showing you our activity. As you can see, back in FY10, at the height of the stimulus program, we had a lot of federal money that we utilized, and we had a really banner year as far as making loans. The decrease that you see in 11 and 12 really a reflection of the economy. We started bouncing back in FY13, and this past year we've had a really good year, and 14 is projecting to be even better from a making loan standpoint. So it is a reflection of how communities are doing and the fact that there's a serious backlog of work that folks need to do. So things are looking really good on the loan side. We're also home to the Georgia Land Conservation Program and the Land Conservation Council. Through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, we provide loans to local governments and non-governmental organizations such as Conservation Fund, et cetera. And we've been able to date permanently protect some 300,000 acres, and since 2005 have awarded about $95 million in loans and grants for land conservation purposes. And with that, Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Did I do it? Did I make it?
You did great,
All
but
right.
if you'll stay put for just a minute, I think, especially for our newer members,
Okay.
if they get approached by their local governments for assistance in fund, not loans, but actually grant money for different water projects and such as that, I'm not sure that everyone's aware that there is a strict process in place in which you go through to make the needs of your area known. So could you just briefly explain that?
Yeah, when we have in the federal side, we have the ability to do what we call principal forgiveness, which acts like a grant with a loan. And we do that based off of the economic condition of those counties using the One Georgia Authority map for distressed counties. And so there, when we go through our and develop our intended use plan or our IUP, we take applications and we look at how much we can provide in principal forgiveness, and then we award those projects to those communities. So that's really, right now, those are the only grant type funds we have available. We do incorporate that into the loan side. So if somebody got a $2 million loan, they might could get $500,000 in principal forgiveness. So they end up paying $1.5 million.
This body in the past has looked into legacy type programs and such as that, but I guess my emphasis here today is there's just not pots of money sitting around that you can try and influence to get that back to your community. We actually have a plan in place, and it has to be regional of nature and such as that. So it's fair, but
it is. It's a very, everything's pretty limited now, and of course, grant money has been hard to come by for many, many years. And so, but we are able on the federal side to do some work with that, and that's what we try to maximize.
Okay. And then the emphasis is also not on individual counties or individual needs. The overall perspective of the state is really regional in impact and gauged on population and such as
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
So Kevin's available to us at any time for questions. I think that's something that if you're not familiar with this process, it would help you to learn it, because especially if you're new, you're going to have folks approaching you, will get us some money for this and that. And believe me, we've all tried it, and you have to go through a process. So thank you very much for your
Thank you,
presentation.
and be glad to help anybody or work with anybody whenever you
Okay.
want.
And you'll be available after the meeting, right?
If you want me to.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have Robert Ferris, Georgia Forestry.
Good morning, Madam Chair
Good morning.
and Committee. I'm Robert Ferris, your Georgia State Forester and Director of the Georgia Forestry Commission, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I've brought some of our program chiefs, department chiefs, to update your new members on who the Georgia Forestry Commission is and what we do. The Georgia Forestry Commission is your state forestry agency, and our vision is to ensure that Georgia maintains those healthy, sustainable forests that are providing our citizens with clean air, clean water, and abundant forest products, not only for today, but for generations to come. And we do that with 572 GFC professionals located in 107 offices across the state. Annually, we average fighting about 6,000 wildfires here in Georgia. We do that with 330 crawler tractors, 150 Type 6 and Type 7 fire engines, and a mixed fleet of fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft. We also have approximately 30 foresters, county management foresters, and we also have another 30 foresters or so managing our forest programs, management programs that include forest health, landowner assistance and cost share programs, forest inventory and analysis, marketing utilization, state lands, reforestation efforts, water quality programs, and forest stewardship programs. So you've got a document in front of you that outlines our services. We cover pretty much all aspects of forestry in the state. And by any measure you care to use, forestry is huge in Georgia. It's important to Georgia's citizens. Georgia is blessed with 24.7 million acres of forest land that cover about 2/3 of our state. And what not many folks recognize is that 91% of our forest land here in Georgia is privately owned. What that means is Georgia has more privately owned, commercially available timberland than any state in this nation. Again, forestry is huge in Georgia. Forestry in Georgia has an annual economic impact of over $29 billion. It supports 135,000 jobs and provides over $600 million in revenues to the state, tax revenues, to kind of help with that pot of money you were talking about before, Chairman. Our forests also provide over $37 billion annually in ecosystem services, free to our citizens. That includes things like clean water, clean air, recreation, and aesthetics. If Georgia were a country unto itself, we would rank 7th in the world in forest-based economies. Georgia leads the nation in the production of forest groundwood. That is, logs that are going into pulp and paper, OSB, plywood, energy wood even, all the different forest products. Georgia's blessed with the best forestry school in the South, with the Warnell School at the university. On top of that, we've got a new 4-year forestry program coming on out of ABAC. Georgia's fortunate to have one of the oldest conservation organizations in the country, and that's the Georgia Forestry Association. We have the Hurdy Center in Savannah that promotes forest product development. We have the Renewable Biomass Institute at Georgia Tech, and the list goes on, and I'm going to let our department chiefs talk about some other aspects and component of how Georgia is first in the nation and oftentimes in the world when it comes to forestry matters. With that, I'm going to introduce Devin Dartnell, our Director of Field Operations. Our Fire Chief, Frank Sorrells, was not able to join us this morning. So Devin's going to speak a little bit about our fire control efforts in Georgia and field operations.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. As Robert mentioned, I'm Devin Dartnell. I'm subbing for Frank Sorrells, our Chief of Forest Protection this morning. I'd like to take a couple of minutes of your time and tell you about the forest protection services we provide and the operations of the Forestry Commission. As Robert mentioned, forestry is very important to Georgia, and the Forestry Commission is committed to protecting our forest resources from the ravages of wildfire so that forestry can continue its vital role in our state's economy, environment, and in our daily lives. The Forest Protection Department oversees wildfire detection and suppression efforts in the state. We maintain firefighting personnel and equipment such as bulldozers, fire engines, and fixed-wing airplanes, and a helicopter. Let me share a few additional statistics related to Georgia wildfires. The primary factor that influences wildfire in Georgia is weather. In the last 7 years, we've shattered records with respect to wildfires in Georgia. We've had the 2 worst years on record in 2007 and again in 2011. And in 2010 and 2014, we had our lowest number of wildfires. Climatologists predict similar extreme variable conditions to persist for the next 25-year prediction period. On average, wildfires burned about 45,000 acres in Georgia from more than 6,000 wildfires each year. For the past 5 years, wildfire size in Georgia has averaged 6.9 acres. Forestry Commission personnel response time from the time of dispatch until initial attack is 26 minutes in the state of Georgia. That includes after hours and weekends fires. While we still utilize personnel in fire towers in remote locations, we rely primarily on air operations to detect wildfires. The easiest wildfire to suppress is the one that never starts. So fire prevention and community wildfire protection plans are a priority for us at the Georgia Forestry Commission. GFC professionals present approximately 590 fire prevention programs throughout the state, reaching over 1.5 million Georgians annually. Smokey Bear is alive and well. He made 224 appearances in 2014, accompanied with Georgia Forestry Commission personnel. 139 of our 159 counties have worked with the Forestry Commission to complete community wildfire protection plans. We work with local county and city management officials to develop these plans to provide a wildfire risk assessment and detailed mitigation strategies for their communities. Georgia has 71 Firewise USA communities. That's the 6th most in the nation. Firewise engages local citizens and encourages them to take ownership of their wildfire preparedness by educating them on how they can protect their homes, neighborhoods, and communities and businesses in the event of wildfire. We also offer pass-through grants to help fund some of the wildfire mitigation strategies. Through our Rural Fire Defense Program, we currently have 1,550 pieces of state and federal excess fire suppression apparatus assigned to 112 counties. The equipment serves 863 fire stations, mostly in rural communities with populations of 10,000 people or less. A relatively recent program called the Firefighter Property Program is a partnership with the Department of Defense. Through this program, we have acquired $32.5 million in value-added assets to local emergency management agencies and for the Georgia Forestry Commission. Through a volunteer fire assistance grant provided by the United States Forest Service, we provide 50-50 cost share funding to rural fire departments for the acquisition of personal protective equipment, radios, and other fire equipment. As Robert mentioned, we provide a lot of landowner services to forest landowners in the state. Our field personnel provide pre-suppression, fire break plowing, and harrowing for 6,000 landowners annually. We install 30,500 miles of pre-suppression breaks annually. That's over one trip around the equator on a bulldozer. We issue an average of 759,000 burn permits annually for people to burn yard debris, agricultural fields, silvicultural, forestry applications, and land clearing purposes. An average of 1.5 million acres of land is intentionally burned every year in Georgia, with the Forestry Commission providing direct assistance to 1,867 landowners on average, burning 167,000 acres of land annually. We initiated a new program in 2013 called the Hazard Fuel Mastication Program, which is basically mowing heavy underbrush in areas where prescribed fire is not applicable, areas around communities, schools, and other smoke-sensitive areas. The new service provided 214 landowners mechanical fuel reduction services on 1,661 acres in its first year. The Forestry Commission has the only nationally qualified Type 2 incident management team in the state. We work closely with GEMA to help with management and oversight of all sorts of tough incidents, from wildfires to tornadoes to ice storms, and even good incidents when they occur, like the G8 Summit. On average, 13%, or about 769 of the wildfires occurring annually in Georgia, are caused by arson. Arson accounts for 8,400 acres burned annually. In the last 7 years, our Georgia Forestry Commission law enforcement personnel have investigated 533 wildfires, and that resulted in 93 arrests being made. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Gary White, the Chief of Forest Management. Gary will tell you about our Forest Management Department, including how that department ties into our law enforcement program for the new Timber Security Program, which was initiated on July 1st of 2014. Thank you for your time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Gary White, Chief of Forest Management. The role of the Forest Management Department is to provide up-to-date, scientific, non-biased forestry-related technical information and advice to Georgia's private landowners. This advice is catered to each landowner to meet their individual goals for their property. This advice serves to enhance the forest for economic, social, and environmental benefits, not only for the forest landowner, but for all of Georgia's citizens. This forest management assistance is delivered to private landowners through professional foresters. Some of these foresters are assigned to counties and deal directly with the public. Other foresters help implement and deliver regional and/or statewide programs. Our foresters have cooperated with the federal government to bring almost $8 million annually of cost share programs to Georgia landowners to help them manage their forests. Our forest health program battles invasive plants and insects, from the hemlock woolly adelgid in the North Georgia mountains to kogon grass that can be found all over the state, as well as native insects such as the southern pine beetle. Our sustainable community forestry program works with large and small communities to help manage the urban forest. Georgia is a national leader in the Tree City USA program, which recognizes communities for their efforts in urban forestry. Our urban forestry strike team is one of the best trained and prepared in the nation for responding to natural disasters that affect the urban forest, and was instrumental in facilitating FEMA payments to communities after last year's ice storm. Other statewide programs that are important to the wise use and management of our forests include our Stewardship Management Program and our Water Quality Program. Our Forest Inventory and Analysis Program helps us monitor forest conditions over time. The Georgia Forestry Commission also manages several state forests for multiple objectives. That includes traditional forest products, wildlife habitat, and recreational opportunities for the public. Assistance is also given to other state agencies for the management of forest lands they own, including Georgia Department of Natural Resources, Georgia Department of Transportation, University of Georgia, and the Georgia Department of Corrections. Again, the goal of these activities is to help these other state agencies meet their ownership objectives on their properties. As Devin mentioned, since the passage of House Bill 790, our management foresters have assisted our law enforcement investigators by performing stump cruises on timber security cases to determine the amount, type, and value of timber products that may have been stolen. We have received 72 timber security complaints to date. Of those, 41 were determined to be criminal cases. 3 have resulted in charges with over $25,000 recovered for landowners. I'll now turn it over to our Forest Utilization Chief, Risher Willard, who will tell you a little bit about our efforts to maintain healthy markets for our forests. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Risher Willard. I am the department head for GFC's Marketing and Utilization Department. Our department has 4 personnel. We have statewide responsibilities in 3 major program areas: economic development of forest industry projects, technical assistance in forest product market development, and establishing new forest products and values. Our department's mission is to add value to Georgia's $29 billion forest products industry, Georgia's second largest industry. In the most recent Forest Industry Economic Impact Report for the state, total economic impacts from Georgia's forest industry for output, employment, and wages and salaries all increased by 16%, 15%, and 16% respectively over the previous year. Georgia's forest industry thrives because of the state's highly productive and sustainable forests. Georgia's 24 million acres of commercial timberlands grow 45% more wood per year than is removed by harvesting. As Director Ferris referenced, Georgia has many national and global forest industry leaders right here in Georgia. Our forests enable the following forest industry leaders. The largest hardwood sawmill in the United States is located in Hazelhurst. That is Beasley Forest Products. The largest recycled paper mill in North America is located in Dublin, SP Fiber Technologies. The largest wood pellet plant in the world is located in Waycross, Georgia Biomass. The largest tall oil biorefinery in the world is located in Savannah, Arizona Chemical. And the largest wood rosin plant in the world is located in Brunswick, Pinova. Our department staff are key players in the development and growth of Georgia's biomass energy sector. Georgia's portfolio of wood pellet mills has grown from 0 to 10 plants from 2007 to today, and more are planned. Because of this growth, Georgia ranks #1 in U.S. exports of wood pellets to the world. In addition, 2 wood biomass electricity plants are located in Rabun Gap and Barnesville, and a 3rd plant in Dublin will be online in June. We provide technical assistance including forest resource analyses for existing industry expansions or new industrial prospects. We cooperate with other state agencies in recruiting new forest product and biomass facilities. We participate in state, regional, and national projects to expand Georgia forest products in global markets through international trade events. And we produce forest industry directories and partner with other state agencies and regional and national organizations in developing various types of marketing materials. We also work to establish new forest products and values that will encourage forest owners to keep their lands in forests. We developed and maintain the Georgia Carbon Registry to assist Georgia forest owners in quantifying their carbon that is sequestered in their growing trees and forests. We also cooperate with regional partners in developing standardized ecosystem services evaluation tools, which may lead to new values realized from forests. For example, as Director Ferris referenced, Georgia's forests provide over $37 billion annually in ecosystem services benefits to Georgians. In summary, the Marketing and Utilization Department of the Georgia Forestry Commission is charged with strengthening and expanding markets for Georgia forest products. If we can ever be of assistance to you, please let us know. Next, you will hear from our Reforestation Chief, Jeff Fields, who will tell you about the work GFE is doing to ensure that we have quality trees for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Jeff Fields. I'm Chief of Reforestation for the Georgia Forestry Commission. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Let me start out by sharing with you the purpose of our reforestation department. The purpose of our department is to provide high-quality, genetically improved seedlings at an affordable price. And I can break our department down into three entities. First, I'll start with the tree improvement program. We are members of two tree improvement co-ops, one for loblolly pine and one for slash pine. And as a result of membership with this loblolly co-op, the GFC has increased the volume per acre, the loblolly pine that we produce, by between 30 and 54%. The GFC can also be proud to say that through these efforts, we have the top 3 families in the Southeast in terms of volume growth per acre. These 3 families in a family mix will average 54% more volume per acre at rotation age. As the last 2 growing seasons, seed availability has been limited, and these seedlings have sold out very rapidly. In the future, we plan to have more seed available so we can grow more of these seedlings. And we have dubbed these seedlings the name Georgia Giants. And through our slash pine co-op, we have also made tremendous strides as well, resulting in increased disease resistance, better form, and an average of 23% more volume gain per acre. Our seed orchards, that would be our next entity. And basically, our tree improvement program has had a profound effect on our seed and seedling quality and increased the present value of our orchards dramatically. For example, the present value of our Arrowhead Seed Orchard as a regional breeding center through the NC State Co-op is valued at $483 million southwide and $113 million in Georgia. The Flint River Seed Orchard, one of our orchards, we have 128 acres of advanced generation pine orchards there. We have premium slash, select premium slash, and pitch canker resistant slash at that orchard. We also had 38 acres of hardwood seed production areas at Flint River. Arrowhead Seed Orchard, we have 326 acres of advanced cycle pine orchards. We have Piedmont lob, we have rust-resistant loblolly, genetically advanced slash pine, and genetically enhanced shortleaf pine. And there's also 25 acres of hardwood seed collection areas there. And last, our nursery program, our nurseries and seedling sales. At our Flint River Nursery facility, we have 210 acres there available under irrigation to produce seedlings, where we typically produce between 12 million and 20 million seedlings per year. We are members of the Auburn University Cooperative Forestry Research Program, and where they provide assistance to us in growing our seedlings all the way from start to finish. The seedling orders can be taken from June, starting in June and going through February. They can be ordered through a lockbox address. The orders can be sent directly to the lockbox, or you can go online at gatrees.org and order these seedlings through an online store. And lastly, I'd like to sum up by saying that our reforestation program is a self-sustaining program. Our nursery program basically funds our orchards and our tree improvement program at no expense to the Georgia taxpayers. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Director Ferris to finish up. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm extremely proud of all of our GFC team and our entire forestry community across the state out there. And I hope y'all feel that same way about forestry in Georgia. And I want to reiterate that no matter what part of the state you're from, whether it's Waycross or Gainesville or here in Atlanta, Georgia's forests are important to our citizens. They're important to your constituents. And the role that you play as a legislator and a policy maker is extremely important to the forestry community, extremely important to ensuring that Georgia's forests remain sustainable and continue to provide all those benefits, the economic, social, and environmental benefits that our folks have talked about. For the benefit of some of the newer members, some of the legislation, House Bill 790 last year, Representative Williams, hugely important, protecting our landowners' rights and protecting providing timber security, Forest Land Protection Act, the Conservation Use Valuation Assessment System, the support you provided to the Forestry Commission with pay parity this past year, all important to ensuring the sustainability of our forests. So with that, I thank you for the time and opportunity, and we'd be happy to address any questions, and we will be here following the meeting. So.
Thank you. And every year now, this committee recognizes on the floor the winners of our Northern and Southern Division and the state. So there's a friendly competition among all of our different units in the state. But to the committee, this is an agency that quietly works and gets everything done. So it's good to pause every now and then and recognize what they do. So thank you very much. And stay tuned. Follow Chuck Williams. I can't remember the date now, end of February. So y'all just look on the House floor. We'll have some of these folks up here so you can talk to them personally. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you.
And next we have Georgia Association of Water Professionals. Jack Dozier is going to present. And we were talking a while ago, when we pass our water policies and such as that, they are in fact implemented. And Jack has a wealth of knowledge of the progress this state has made through the years. So I've asked that he spend just a little bit of time giving us an overview of what the state has actually accomplished through its policies of our General Assembly, but also through their efforts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to object. Somebody is trying to sabotage my presentation by putting bottled water under the
Okay. While we're getting set up, again, as a reminder to the committee, we'll post our subcommittee meetings on the bulletin board. You can always check with our office as the bills are now coming in to the committee. We'll be announcing our committee meetings, and you can see which committees you're on. So thank you. And Jack, you ready?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank
you
you.
very much. Madam Chair has already given you my elevator speech of who we are. We're the Georgia Association of Water Professionals. Is an organization of some 4,000 people that are responsible for complying with state and federal environmental laws related to water. Our folks are the folks that run your public water systems, the environmental managers at your industrial facilities, the consulting engineers, the equipment representatives, and other folks that are involved in the business of meeting the Safe Drinking Water Act and the state level act, as well as the Federal Clean Water Act and Georgia's Water Quality Control Act. We try to be a one-stop shop for people that are involved in the water business in Georgia. And so we've taken 3 national organizations, local chapters, and brought them under our umbrella. And I am the past executive director of GAWP. I was in that position for 24 years. And I've got with me Pam Burnett, who is our new executive director, and will take us to the next level, and will be your contact as we move into the future. We were founded in 1932. We're not the new guys around here. We've been in business for a long time. We started the first meeting of our association was an operators training school, and we've grown from that into an organization that does training. We run the full-time training institute for water and wastewater operators and laboratory analysts in Carrollton. That is funded in part through a contract with EPD, but it used to be funded 100%. Now it's funded about 35%, and the rest is paid by tuition fees. We have a full-time office in Marietta, and I think some of you have been to our office, and we make that available to you for meetings as you see fit. One of the things we do is lobby, but only a little bit. We're a 501c3 organization. So we don't get heavily involved in lobbying, but we are a resource to you when you're dealing with things like you dealt with last year, Flint River Drought Protection Act, inside versus outside city limits rates, the ban on aquatic storage and recovery, ASR, the Tennessee River issue, and interbasin transfers. We deal with interbasin transfers pretty much every year. This year you're looking at things like Water Professionals Appreciation Day, buffer zones for marshes may be the most contentious issue you deal with on water. Tennessee River is still on the table. Interbasin transfers, again, we always expect to see some interbasin transfer. Even things like drones. There's a new legislation out this year that would limit where you can use drones, and some of our facilities use those for overseeing the facilities. Just a few things to kind of put things into perspective. 1.1 billion people in this world don't have access to safe drinking water. 2.6 billion people, 40% of the world's population, don't have access to safe sanitation. During the course of my presentation this morning, 60 people, 60 children will die from waterborne diseases. None of those will be in Atlanta. None of them will be in Georgia. They won't be in my hometown or yours because of the improvements we've made in water quality and drinking water and providing safety for those. In developing countries, women and children spend their entire waking hours hauling water for agricultural purposes, for bathing, for cleaning, for cooking, for sanitation. And as a result, they're never able to get an education, so that cycle just continues. And one of the things we're working on is trying to bring safe drinking water to other parts of the world. Half of the hospital beds in the world are occupied by people with waterborne diseases. Well, how safe is your drinking water? Our standards are designed to protect you from one in a million incremental risk of getting cancer if you drink drink water from your tap at the accepted standards. If you drink 2 liters a day for 70 years, you will increase your chances of getting cancer by no more than 1 in a million. That's what the standards are set at. Likewise, eating 5 pounds of fish that are at the standards that we've set for fish tissue, 5 pounds a year for 70 years would increase your chances of getting cancer by 1 in a million. Now, you've got 1 in 4 chances of getting cancer in your lifetime anyway, and 1 in 8 chances of dying of cancer. And just to put it in perspective, what is 1 in a million? Well, most of us took a 1 in a million chance of dying by driving down here this morning. I've got a 1 in a million chance of living through this speech. You're probably familiar with Georgia's water resources, but we've got our state water planning effort that we've done now is focusing on regional planning. We've got 14 river basins in Georgia, and one of the things that you see is long, skinny basins. We've got, and virtually all of them head up in Georgia, so we don't have to worry about anything anybody else gives us, but they don't give us anything, including water. And here's the rub. We've got, as you can see where the people are, half of the state's population is here in metro Atlanta. Well, that's not where the water is. We should follow Forestry's lead and put our capital city in Hazelhurst, because that's where the water is. We've got in North Georgia from the fall line, and the fall line runs basically from Columbus through Macon to Augusta. North Georgia is Piedmont area, mountainous, fairly small streams, very little groundwater to speak of because of the rock formations. South Georgia is the streams are a lot bigger, but they move very slowly. We've got an abundant supply of safe water in the groundwater. It's like in South Georgia, it's like a big underground lake. It's a big sponge. But here's the catch. Atlanta sits right on a continental divide, subcontinental divide. If you were to have dinner at Merrimack's and drink 3 or 4 glasses of sweet tea and walk across Peachtree Street to the Fox for a play, you're probably going to participate in an interbasin transfer at some point during the evening. The continental divide literally runs right down Peachtree Street. Interbasin transfers are one of those things that are they're not unusual because of our geography. If we don't have any interbasin transfers, we don't have any regional systems. So it's a tool. I'm not saying it's always good or always bad, but it's a tool that we need to have available to us. I can't remember the number, but it's well over 100 of our 159 counties in Georgia are in 2 or more river basins. So just to kind of give you an idea, our planning purposes and our political purposes don't follow water basin lines. They follow other lines. And Georgia's got a lot of water. I mean, we get 50 inches of rain per year or more in most of the state. But we have no natural lakes in Georgia. What we get, we've got to manage. So sometimes we resort to extreme measures. In 2007, Governor Perdue prayed for rain. 2 years later, my in-laws' house in Austell on Sweetwater Creek was underwater. I mean, that was when the water first came up. That picture on the left is their house. And the next day when we went back, there was a boat literally on top of their house. So be careful what you ask for. And this is just a statistic that ARC provides. If Metro Atlanta didn't exist, when we're talking about the battles with Florida over rights to the water in the ACF basin, if Metro Atlanta didn't exist, we would only have 1% more base flow at the Fort Lauderdale state line in the Chattahoochee-Flint system on average. Just to quickly go through where we were and where we are now, Georgia's first real water quality control legislation was the Water Quality Control Act of 1964. Last year we celebrated the 50th anniversary of that act. Going back to the beginning, Rock Howard, I throw this out because I think it's important that as members of the Natural Resources Committee, you at least be familiar with that name. Rock Howard was the original pioneer of Georgia's water quality movement. He was the executive secretary of the Water Quality Control Board, hired in 1964, and he's one of my heroes. I had the privilege of working with him for 1 year when I first started at EPD in 1975. What he found in 1965 when he was hired as the executive secretary of the Water Quality Control Board was that we had 25 public water systems, public sewage systems with no treatment, 25 cities that didn't have any public sewage system, 40 that had an existing collection system but no treatment, 60 that had a sewer system and primary treatment, and 50 that had something like secondary treatment. But and we had 395 industries that had no known or that had known untreated and inadequately treated wastewater. The Chattahoochee River every year would go septic in the summer. The Savannah Harbor would go septic every summer. Virtually every stream below a major city or below a major industry would go septic. And as Georgia actually passed its Water Quality Control Act 8 years before the Federal Clean Water Act was passed. Senator Muskie had been working on environmental legislation at the federal level for several years and gotten no attention at all until the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland caught fire. And that brought attention to it. Georgia actually had its own streams that caught fire. Peachtree Creek in DeKalb County caught fire back in the 50s. But as the father of the Clean Water Act, the reason I put this statement up there, and you can read it, I won't read it to you, is because when we passed our state water planning act, the mission statement is strikingly similar to Senator Muskie's observation back in 1966. And I'm not going to go through these other than to tell you that as we developed from 1972 and moved forward, we've got, you'll notice, are just increasing standards. We've gone from first trying to get secondary treatment for everybody to trying to get water quality based standards. And moving forward, we are dealing with more and more stringent standards on point source discharges. And then we throw in stormwater. When I was at EPD in the early 80s, we did an analysis of our water quality problems. We said, we don't have any non-point source problems. Well, we did. We just didn't know it because the point source problems were so bad. But now the vast majority of problems that we've got in Georgia with water quality come from non-point source. And you know, we are part of the problem and part of the solution. We all contribute to non-point source pollution. Again, moving forward, we see more and more increasingly stringent standards. We've got an aging infrastructure that GFA helps us deal with, but very little funding like there was back in the 70s when we had a huge construction grants program to help municipalities. And today we've got about 200 facilities that have advanced waste treatment. And again, virtually every stream in the state of Georgia, every facility to treat water, municipal and industrial waste is designed and capable of meeting the standards to achieve water quality standards. Georgia was among the first to develop a water plan, state water plan, and I think it's important to look at the balance here. We manage our water resources in a sustainable manner to support the state's economy, public health and natural systems, and to enhance the quality of life for all citizens. And I'm not going to read these to you. You can your slides. Those you have to get a magnifying glass, probably. But the planning process looked at a whole lot of variables and took as many things into account as possible to make sure that we got a good water plan. And now it's moving down to sub-state. And so virtually anything that happens from this point forward that involves water will have to be consistent with the regional plans that are developed. And water conservation, we've got one of the most aggressive water conservation programs in the country, thanks to the Water Stewardship Act of 2010 that many of you were helped in passing. And then for our folks from Waycross, Pogo, as you know, we've met the enemy and he is us. This is, to me, a sign of success. The Cuyahoga River today has a kayaking venue, but so does Columbus. Columbus, Georgia has the Chattahoochee River has now got an active kayaking venue, Olympic level. Savannah River, who would have thought from 1972 when the act was first passed, when Rock Howard came in 1965, this was his major target. American Cyanamide was a company that was treating titanium ore that was brought down from the Northeast because apparently they had standards that we didn't have. So they bring the titanium ore down to Georgia, treat it by putting it in a sulfuric acid bath, and then to purify the titanium, and then dump the spent sulfuric acid directly into the harbor. natRes021215EDITED came down here and did an expose on Savannah Harbor. Things were so bad. Today, it's probably the crown jewel of Georgia's tourism industry. The Middle Chattahoochee River at Columbus, as I mentioned, we've got a river walk there that was built in part as a joint project with a water quality project to fix their combined sewer overflows. And it's now an attraction for the city instead of an embarrassment. The Conasauga River in Dalton. Any of you been around long enough to remember driving across the Conasauga River on 75 and knowing what color carpet they were making that day because of the color of the river? And that's how bad it was. Again, the Savannah River Walk. The Chattahoochee River below Atlanta supports an active fishery. There were times when I was at EPD, there were times that we knew we're making progress when we had fish kills, because that meant we had fish. So just a few takeaway messages that I'd like to leave you with. Number one, and I didn't really say this, but I guess I implied it, environmental protection and economic development have got to go hand in hand. They can't be one at the expense of the other. We can't have a strong environment, a clean environment, without having the resources to be able to make that happen. And when the economy goes south, a lot of times environmental protection efforts are the first thing to suffer. Water issues are very complex, and each situation is different. And I would suggest to you, let's try to not take tools completely out of the toolbox. And I'm not going to get any more political than that with it, but we need to keep resources available to us as much as possible. Your tap water is safe. If you drink bottled water because you like the taste of it better, if you drink bottled water because it's more convenient, fine. But if you go to the store and buy a case of bottled water because you don't want to drink your tap water, I would suggest to you that you're spending a lot of money you don't need to spend. We bring a product to you, to your door on demand, and then we take it away when you're through with it. And I would suggest to you, because of that, because we don't have to go haul water back and forth, that the water professionals are as responsible for the quality of life that we enjoy in this country as anybody. We need a strong, well-staffed EPD. We need to be able to enforce the laws that we got in place. And I would also suggest to you, our laws are strong. They, from time to time, need tweaking, but by and large, we've got very, very strong legislation. We just need the ability to enforce it. And at the end, I would say, go find your local water treatment plant operator, wastewater treatment plant operator, and give them a big hug. And again, our contact information is here. Pam Burnett, again, is now our executive director, and she will be more than happy, and I certainly will be happy to try to answer any questions that you've got. I've enjoyed working with this committee for 24 years now, and I look forward to working with you this one last time.
All right, thank you very much, and thanks to all the presenters this morning. We are running a bit short on time, but we'll take a couple of questions because I hate for us to have all this information and if somebody's got a question, not to get that answered. Number 10.
Just a quick question, and I understand lawsuits, and I understand where Georgia and Florida and Alabama and all is. Where are y'all on the idea of surcharges on water rates, especially in non-affected areas like the east side of the state?
Let me be as... We think the utilities should be able to control the rates. But that said, we are not weighing in on any legislation on that at this point.
The reason I ask is a lot of these little water treatment facilities pay for their facilities by selling water, which is
right.
what they do.
Right.
And I'm afraid that if some of these rules under the drought deal that EPD has that might require you to raise, add a surcharge to the rate, might affect their ability to pay.
And we're working with EPD on it. We have the same concern. It's a really tricky situation because we need to do everything we can to implement conservation and to incentivize conservation. We though think the things that were put in place with 2010, we really haven't had a chance to test them. The things that we put in place with the Water Stewardship Act, we haven't seen an extreme drought to that point that we could see how well the things we implemented in that act work. But this is one of those things that we think things should be worked out between the regulated community and EPD. I don't think we need legislation at this point to get to that. I'm real nervous about that. It's a tricky situation, though, Mr. McCall, as you know. And you asked me a tough question. I should have let Pam try to answer this thing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let me, and I know people have other meetings to go to, but one question I would like to ask is on the EPA directions on carbon emissions. Are we getting any credit for you? I think Mr. Field mentioned the fact that we have carbon sequestration standards that we have, that we know how much we're sequestering. how does that balance out?
With the clean energy proposal, EPA proposal, the final rules will be out in August. But as they stand right now, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get any credit on the sequestered carbon through our forest, or that those values be recognized. But we are working with Judd to try and make sure that the bioenergy aspects that EPA will recognize and allow will be in the state plan.
All right, thank you very much. I have one more quick question, number 8.
My question was related to the presentation that talked about genetically modified, I think, pine. And what I want to know is why do we need it particularly, and what is the difference between regular and when you genetically modify it and grow it?
Well, first of all, I think I probably need to clear up the difference between genetically modified and just in what we do. What we do with the pine trees is just controlled pollination. It's just taking a pollen from one tree and pollinating flowers in another one. In other words, there's no genes or anything that's actually modified in the tree. But all this does is just take the best characteristics that we, through our genetic testing, basically a progeny test where we go out and we look at these trees at age 6 and we judge them by their height, their diameter at breast height, and their disease resistance, and we just try to basically cross the best parents to produce the best offspring. Is all we're doing. That's been done thousands of years. So, but basically, the state and private industry together through this co-op are doing this.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we will end the question because I know people have other things to do. Thanks again to all the presenters, and I will accept a motion to adjourn. Motion carried.